Hey, my name is Chris, and this is Coding in Public. The intention is basically to help me relearn some of the stuff I've been learning. I'm new to web development by teaching through it and by forcing myself to do it kind of in sequence and in a compressed time period. Hopefully, that will help cement what I've been learning and be a help to you. I'm the first to admit that I'm not the best. I've just started. However, if I'm just a couple of weeks ahead of you, hopefully, this will help you surpass me. And some of these things would have been a help for me to see just a few weeks ago. So hopefully it's a help to somebody out there, but I'm confident that if I do it well, it can be a help to me as well. What I've got here is just kind of a boilerplate HTML page, and I've got this container, which I probably need to finish wrapping off here. And it's just got a display flex. I'm just setting everything in the middle and putting some padding around it, have a max width, that kind of stuff. What we're going to build is an accordion where when you kind of click the header, it drops down, and then there'll be a button in each of those sections, which if you click will jump you ahead to the next section, expand the next section, and collapse the one you were just viewing. So what we're going to do is go ahead and create kind of a series of divs. And you can do this in a bunch of different ways, but this is the way I did it most recently, and so I figured I might as well kind of go over it again in my own mind here. So we're going to create a div, and I'm just using Emmet here, which is what expands all this. So an accordion header, and we'll just call this step 1. And inside this, we're going to have, actually, let's do it this way. We're going to have 2 items inside this accordion header. Let's have an H3. So I guess if we're going to keep using Emmet, I should probably keep using Emmet. So we'll have an H3, and I'm not going to have a class on it. And we'll call this step 1. And then we'll have an image. And we're going to switch this image when we click it. So we'll just throw a class on this and add the actual image in the CSS. So we're going to call this chevron. All right, now I'm already getting an error. So I think it's because it's trying to expand this. So we won't worry about it for now. All right, so we've got this accordion header, and we're going to do a couple of things to this, but for now, let's go ahead and just add the content. So we'll have an accordion content below, another div, and here we'll just do like, I don't know, yeah, we'll just do a little bit of text, and maybe we'll add some variety here. So let's add a UL with, let's see, like 3 LIs, and somehow I didn't expand that properly. So let's add a UL again. And see, I told you we're learning on the job. And then we're going to come in here and add 3 LIs. And we'll do 0.1, 0.2, and 0.3. Actually, let's go ahead and make this an ordered list. Okay, because I think I'd styled an order list somewhere in here. Okay, so we've got that, and then let's go ahead and add a button. And we're going to actually have an actual button class here, and the intention is the reason we're using a button instead of just a div that we can click or something like that is typically I've tried to use buttons for interactive elements on a page where when you click it, it does something, but it keeps you on that same page. So we'll take away the default styling here in a moment. So we'll say go to step 2. Something like that, okay? So here we've got this header div, we've got a chevron image kind of placeholder right over here, and then an accordion content with some text, a ordered list, and then a button at the end of it. And in fact, if we were to come down here and just, maybe we should just throw some background colors on this, just so we can see exactly what's going on here. If I can spell background. All right. Oh, that's not going to help us, because we're already got a white background. So there's our header, and here's our accordion content. Okay, so those are kind of our 2 sections we're going to work with. Now, I want to add a class whenever we click on this accordion header. So you can just include this event listener directly in the div itself. And this allows us to say on this element when it's clicked, we're gonna, and then just add a little bit of JavaScript to toggle a class of active. That means that whenever, if I can end this off correctly, whenever we click this header, it's going to be toggling a class of active, and I'll show you that here in a moment. All right, so I think that's all we need to do so far on this header image. Let's go ahead and add the chevron element here. So when we come in here, we're going to just select that class of chevron, and we'll do this for each of them. And then for the content, we'll add this URL of icon chevron up.svg. And now you'll see that right over here. Now what we're also going to want to do is make sure we kind of make that header a display flex so those things are pushed apart, and we'll actually do a space between so that the text is on one side and the chevron is on the other. So let's go ahead and do that now. Display flex, and then we're going to justify content space between. This pushes both of the things in that container to the extremes, and you'll see that just happened right there. Then let's align the items to the center. Actually, before we do that, well, we'll do that and then comment it out. Let me show you what happens if we don't. So let's add some padding. Let's do like 24 pixels and 16 pixels, something like that. So it is centering it, but sometimes when you flip that chevron, yeah, you might have noticed there, if I comment that out, step one here kind of moves just slightly between those two. See how it just jumps down there? So aligning it center ensures that it's directly in the center. We're going to go ahead and add a border too, because we're going to take off that background color. So we'll do a border top. For each of these elements, we'll just do a border top solid, and we're going to do 585250. Okay, so we've got this top border, and now we can go ahead and remove the background color. And so that's step one. I guess we should also style that H3. So let's grab all of our H3s, and we'll do font size. We'll do something like 22 pixels, or I guess let's do like 1.3 REMs, and I think that should be good. Maybe I guess let's do a font weight, and I think I brought in an 800 font, something like that. Okay, so there's step one, and this is kind of the clickable element. Now we're going to toggle this active class. So what I'd like to do is to say whenever the accordion has an active class, we want the chevron to switch. So the way we'll do that is we'll come down here, accordion header active, and then inside that active, which is what this space means, the chevron will change to this. So the content URL, actually let's just go ahead and copy this down, and we'll just change this to down. Okay, so we should see this switching whenever we click, and that shows us that that active toggle class is correctly working. Okay, so we're almost all the way there. The last thing I suppose we need to do is, let's see, let's add a little bit of, well, we'll add that padding, I think, in the JavaScript. But let's go ahead and add just a touch of padding, I guess. So we'll do the same we did above. And let's remove this background. And I guess let's select that button. And let's make it a block element so that it jumps down below there. And let's go ahead and add, let's go ahead and add a border bottom. 2 pixels, solid, and let's do 585250, same as we had before. So we've got one at the top and one at the bottom. Now one thing we're going to want to do here, actually, let's just do side padding here because we're going to add that top padding in the JavaScript. One thing we want to do here is we want to only have this border bottom for the final one. Because let me show you what happens if we copy a bunch of this down. Okay, so let's take this, and I'm just holding Option and Shift and my down arrow, and that duplicates things in most code editors. You'll notice that we've got the top border from the header and now the bottom border, and they're meeting, and so it doubles up the border. But what we do want is we want one on the very bottom down here. So we're going to take the last of the type of accordion content. Last of type. And that's the only one on which we'll add this border bottom. And you'll see that takes care of our doubling of our line here. And when we end up expanding and contracting these, you'll see that as well. We should probably also, let's see, the background. Let's go ahead and just change this to that same 585250 color. And then let's take the color and we'll do something like a light gray. Font size, let's do 1/3 REMs. It's a little much. How about something like that? Padding, we're going to do 12 and 16. And we'll do a border of none and an outline of none to erase those back kind of default characteristics. And we'll make sure we add our normal kind of font that we've been using. And I guess let's go ahead and do font weight bold as well. Okay, something like that. Maybe a border radius, 3 pixels. All right, so we're good to go. I guess we don't have any kind of, if we hover over this, we're not going to get any kind of cursor. So let's do a cursor pointer. Okay, now when we come over this, we've got that as well. While we're at it, we should probably also add that to the clickable header as well, so that when we click it or hover over it, we know we're supposed to click it. And I guess if we want to get really fancy, we'll do a button with a hover, and let's see, a button with active and button with focus. And on all these, we'll say opacity 0.9. Okay, so that when we hover, it looks like it's doing that. All right, we'll do the same thing, I guess, for this accordion header as well. So maybe let's just copy this down and do the same thing here. All right, so now whenever we come here or here and hover over them, they should drop in opacity. All right, so at this point, all we've got left is to hook up the JavaScript and to write all the JavaScript, which is probably why you came here. So hopefully this wasn't too boring, but as we come in here, let's go ahead and add a script tag. And we'll need to add our source, and we're just going to call this accordion.js. It's in the same directory. So right now, it obviously isn't showing anything because there is no accordion.js. So let's do accordion.js. And now this should be linked up. And if I can get this to display, here we go. Let's bring this over here. And we're pretty much done with this style element, the style sheet. So let's get rid of that. And we'll just console log, it works. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and open this inspector tool so that we can see that it works. And it works, which is excellent. That's what we want. All right, so I guess we don't really need this index.html other than to reference these. So let's leave it open just for a moment here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to select, let's go ahead and select, or let's just go ahead and create a function that's going to run and kind of loop over all the headers. So let's go ahead and we'll start by creating a constant that we call FAQ, or not FAQ, what do we call those? Accordion headers. Can't do that in JavaScript, so we'll just call it header. All right, and we're going to say document.query selector all. And we're going to select all of those headers. And what do we call those? Accordion/header. Okay, so we've got document.query selector all, and we're selecting all those elements. And now what we're going to do is run a function on each of those. So for each, And we can call this whatever we want, but let's call it for each, let's call this accordion header here. And then we'll call this for each header. And that'll help keep our terminology separate. So for each of those, we are going to add an event listener. So we'll do header.add event listener. And the event listener we're looking for is a click. And here's the event. I'll scope this out. So all we're doing here is we're grabbing all these accordion headers, and then we're going to loop through them with this for each. I guess I don't know if that's called a function. This is how new we are. I think it's called a method. All right, so this is a method on this query selector element for each of those, and then we'll just name what we're calling each of those. We'll call them each a header. We're going to run this event listener, and this event listener is looking for clicks. And whenever we run click one of those things, here's the function we want to run on it. So let's just do this. Let's go ahead and console log again just to make sure that what we've got so far is working. So when we click here, yeah, every time we click it says it works down below. That's what we want. Okay, so that way we know it's working. Let's go ahead and scroll down and click on this one. It's still working. Excellent. Okay, so we're halfway there. Now here's what we want to do. We want to go ahead and grab the next element sibling. So the way we structured this is these divs are just all stacked one up against each other. They're not nested in any way. So you've got an accordion header followed by an accordion content, etc. So what we can do is then we can say const. So let's do this as a let. We'll call it a panel, or I guess we can call it content since we called it an accordion content. And we'll do the header and then next element sibling. So we've selected that. Now let's do this. If that panel, and we're going to do a couple other things to the styling here in a second. If the max height is basically, if it has this kind of max height element on it, which I'll show you here in a moment, and we're going to say what that needs to be here in a second. So we'll say if that max height is equal to null, and we're going to actually change our CSS so that we'll select it. Then we're going to go ahead and add some padding to the top. This is what I mentioned earlier. So we'll say padding top 0 up here, and then padding bottom 0. Okay, so this is basically if we're collapsing it right here. And then else, and let's just go ahead and copy this down. You probably already have seen this, but we need this to say the same thing. All right, let's grab this here. Else, we're going to set it to the panel, its own scroll height, which should grab, I think it's the padding and everything else, all the content, even if it's not visible on the screen. And we're going to add this and say, give me that height plus 64 pixels. And let's see, let's go ahead and add a padding at the bottom, because that's where our extra space will be for 24 pixels. Okay, so we're pretty much set. We just need to, let's drag this in here, and we need to set a max height on this. So let's go max height is 0. And let's make sure we hide the overflow. And for effect, let's add a transition of all. Let's do 200 milliseconds, ease in and out. Okay, so you'll notice that everything's collapsed here. And when I click on this, I'm getting can't find variable panel. Oh, it's because we called it content. Well, that would make sense. So I'm going to select all of those. And all I did there was selected this first one and then hit Command D and cycled through all the rest of them. And you can multi-select things that way. And now when we click, it jumps ahead. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we want happening. You'll notice that this chevron jumps as well, which is cool. Okay, so the only other thing we need to do here is make it to where when we click on this bottom button, it jumps to the next step. I suppose we could have called these step 1, 2, 3, but you know, details. Let's come in here, I guess, and add the first one just so we don't get too thrown off when we start jumping around. Oh, I guess that's the third one. And let's come up here and add this to the second. Okay, so we got the first 3. We're already 3 done. We might as well finish them off. Or probably what's better is let's just, yeah, I guess let's just finish them off. No sense in doing it if we're not doing it the right way. Okay, hopefully you're listening at 2 speed by now because this is taking a while. Okay, so what we want to do is let's pull this down. I don't think we're going to need that anymore, but I've said that before. So let's go ahead and we're going to add all the buttons. All right, so we're going to do the same kind of thing. Document.query selector all. So this time we're just going to add an element of the button. Okay, and then for each, just like we did above, and we'll just call it a button, I suppose. And for each of these, we want to add an event listener. That event listener is going to be a click. And here's the event we are listening for. Okay, we are going to go ahead and say, let's first select the parent element that the button is in. So as we look here, what's the parent element? Well, it's the content, this accordion content. So let's do that. So let's say the, I guess we're looping over these. So let's call it the content. And because we're scoped to this variable, we don't have to worry about naming it the same thing. We'll just call it the same thing. It should be okay. So we'll say for each button, let's find the parent element. If I can type. Now let's go ahead and do this. Let's console log that, and what it should do is return the entire div that it's in when we click on a button. So click here. It's not. It's just returning content. That's because I put it in quotation marks. All right, so now let's do this again, and there we go. So that's the entire, and if you hover over it, you'll see here that it is showing us that's what it's selected. Okay, good. So let's keep that on there just to make sure that I guess we've got that already, but we'll keep that console log handy for us. Then let's select the current header. That is the header that it's in because we want to toggle that active class on that header. So this time we're going to actually use the content that we just grabbed, and we're going to say let's grab the previous sibling, which would be the header, because again we just stack these divs one after the other. So previous element sibling, and then let's console log that current header. I like to do this just because I don't trust myself and I don't want to get halfway down and realize that I messed something up. So if I click here, yes, now it is showing me just that header, and you see it's got step 1 and that chevron, and if I scroll up here, you see it being shown in the actual web page. Okay, we'll come back in here and let's grab the next header. So what we've done so far is we've gone from the button here, we've gone up to this div. That's our content. That's what we said, let content get the parent element. Then we've gone backwards and grabbed this sibling. Now let's jump forward and grab this next sibling of this accordion header. So let's go ahead and just copy this down, and we'll call this next header. And instead of previous element sibling, we'll say next element sibling, except this time we're not, I guess, yeah, let's go ahead and keep it off that content. I guess that makes sense. And then let's do next header, and it should give us step 2. It should give us that header, and you'll see that's what it's done. And then let's come in here and let's grab the next element sibling, except this time not off the content, but off the next header. And we're going to grab not the next header, but the next content. Okay, and if we want to get really pedantic, I guess we can come in here and console log the next content. So what this should do is when we click on here, it should jump using this header that we're grabbing here in this next header, Then grab the next element sibling and console log the next element sibling. All right, so let's see what it's done. That's exactly what it's done. And if we expand this here, you'll notice this is the content that we're grabbing, all that kind of accordion content. All right, so we're mostly there. We've done all the selections. Now all we need to do is basically copy down our styles from up above. You could wrap all this in some kind of function. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but let's just grab this and say, let's add all of this to the next panel. So we called that next content. So let's come in here and call this next content. Okay, so you'll see what we've done here is we've selected all these things, and now we're gonna, whenever this button is clicked, on the next content item, we're gonna add all these elements to it. In fact, we'll need to do this first on the content, so I messed that up, of course, because first what we're doing is getting rid of those styles. So this content, this is the parent element that the button's in. We're going to set all those that way. Then we're going to come in here and say, now on this one, for the next content, we're going to make those changes. Let's expand this so we've got a little bit more visible what's going on here. Okay. All right, now the only other thing we need to do is toggle those header classes. So let's go ahead and let's clean this up just a touch. Let's go ahead and grab the current header. And on that current header, we're gonna toggle the class active because we're trying to shut that one down, turn the chevron around, all that kind of stuff. Then we're gonna come here and we're gonna find the next header and toggle it as if we clicked it. Okay, so if we did everything right, this should be working. Come up here, we've got a little hovering cursor, click on it, and it expands. That's what we want. If we were to click on this again, it collapses. Now, the moment of truth for the button, we click this, and we're getting a type error. So we did shut it properly. That was good. Type error current header dot class list is not a function. Okay, so let's come back here and see what we got going on wrong. Well, that's because on both of these, we need to toggle. All right, now let's try this. All that suspense for nothing. There we go, step 2. We come to step 2, now we come in here. So let's get rid of some of these things and show us what it looks like when it's a little bit bigger here. So we come in here to step 1. We could even have this auto expanded to start with. Like say first of type, its height is whatever. They come in here, step 1, they're done reading that, they click to go to step 2. These should probably say step 4, step 5, step 6. And then this one, we shouldn't have a button on, but details. All right, so that's how you make a little expandable, a collapsible accordion where when you've got a button you click, it auto expands the next one and shuts down the previous one. There's obviously some styling issues here where we could space this out better. We're getting some side-to-side jumping here that I'm not totally sure what's going on. I think it has to do with the way I set this this padding on the entire container. So maybe we could just take that off. Yeah, there we go. Now we're not getting that side-to-side jumping. But anyhow, hopefully that was a help to you, and it was certainly a help to me to be able to go through this and keep on coding.